Closet, a Todd Mills Mystery. Book 1. Author R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher Scribble Pub. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 22. "You look like shit," said Donna Lewis, sitting behind the steering wheel of the Taurus. "Yeah, well, I didn't get much sleep last night," replied Rawlings. His mouth opened in a huge, unstifled yawn, and he glanced down the hill at the collection of cop cars on the grass and along the bicycle path. Lewis and he had been down there for hours and had only just retreated to their car up on the parkway. "What, were you out at the bars trying to find the man of your dreams?" she prodded. "Something like that," answered Rawlings, trying to ignore her by looking through the dense trees and out over the smooth surface of the lake. "And? None of your business, Mom. But you did see Mills. Like I told you, he was at the Gay Times." "That's pretty nervy of him, wouldn't you say?" She reached toward the dashboard for the silver thermos of coffee. "I mean, going out cruising just after you bury your boyfriend doesn't sound so very Puritan, does it? Then again, if he did kill Carter, and perhaps this guy, then obviously he isn't terribly ethical, much less sentimental." Rawlings looked away in disgust and said, "After some of the shit I've seen him pull on TV, I wouldn't call him warm and fuzzy, that's for sure." Rawlings shrugged and slumped against the passenger door of the Taurus, and then closed his eyes. He hadn't been asleep more than an hour or two when the phone started ringing, and he was called down here to Lake Calhoun. And then for the last few hours it had been nothing but chaos as everyone from the crime lab to the coroner and, of course, Channel 7 rushed around, doing their business. Although Lewis and he had yet to talk about it specifically, Rawlings most certainly knew their next task of the day. Crap. He wasn't going to get any time for a nap. All he wanted to do was sleep. Things were calming down now, though. They'd just taken away the body, and the guys should soon be done combing the hillside for any additional items. Already they'd found a number of condoms, and of course the hat. "More," muttered Rawlings, holding out his chipped coffee mug. "Like about a gallon." Yeah, she said as she poured some for him, then for herself. Of course, the guy they'd found knifed in the bushes had been seeking anonymous sex. In Rawlings' mind, there was virtually no doubt about it. Lewis had suggested a simple mugging. Rawlings had told her to stop being ridiculous, and he wasn't that surprised to learn that the dead guy was married, and from the wealthy suburb of Edina. Facts that had been confirmed within the last half hour. Sure, most of the men who hunted for sex in these bushes were gay, either the compulsive types or the perennial lonely hearts. But a good deal weren't. After all, anonymous sex areas like this were anonymous for a very good reason. Many of the guys had much too much to lose, like wives or girlfriends or jobs. "So, do you think this is connected?" asked Lewis. "To the murder of Michael Carter?" Rawlings hesitated, wasn't sure how he should respond, and answered the most simple way, saying, "Probably." Both were knivings. Obviously, both appear to involve gay men. Lewis sipped at her coffee, then added, "But it'll be interesting to see the coroner's report." "He should be able to tell us if the wounds could have been made by the same weapon, or if any sexual act had taken place. After all, they never found proof that Carter was actually doing anything." Lewis shrugged. This guy's pants were open, but that was about it. I mean, it didn't look like he was doing anything hot and heavy. Rawlings shrugged. "Blowjobs? Could be. We'll have to wait to hear from the coroner on that one, too. See what they find in his mouth and stomach." With his head, Rawlings motioned toward the Cubs baseball cap, perched carefully on the back seat, and said, "So at last we have the mysterious Cubs hat. What are we going to do about it? Even if it is his, it doesn't prove anything, not conclusively. Obviously, though, we need to talk to him." "When? The sooner the better, actually. We could just go over there right now. I would imagine this early he'd still be there." The possibility that the cap belonged to Todd Mills had been brought up almost immediately after it had been found in the bushes. Upon seeing it, both Cindy Wilson and Mark Buchanan had stood there dumbfounded. It wasn't that Cubs hats were all that rare in the Twin Cities, merely that Cindy and Mark so clearly associating a hat like this, a real wool Cubs cap like the players wore, with one person in particular. Wait a minute. That's Todd's hat, isn't it? Cindy had said, freezing in her steps. Christ, Buchanan had muttered, knowing fully what it implied. Of course, it might not be, and in any effort to identify its owner, the crime lad had been quick to study the hat and gather a number of hair samples from it. With any luck, there were still a few follicles attached to those samples. Otherwise, they'd get an identification with only 85% certitude, which wouldn't be good enough in court. Nevertheless, the hat was clearly attached to the murder via a stain on the brim, which one of the technicians had taken note of. He'd done a chemical test on site, and the dab had barked up orange, meaning that the spot was in fact blood. They'd be able to ascertain a blood type within a few days, but it would take at least a month to get a foolproof DNA identification. Rawlings downed his coffee and said, why don't you let me go over? Alone? Yeah, I just want to get him talking. See how much he'll say. I think we'll get more information out of him if we keep this as non-intimidating as possible. Not to mention non-custodial. Exactly. Rawlings wondered if Lewis suspected anything, and he added, let me just go over and shoot the breeze with him. I'll get him to make me some coffee and just sort of work into it. You mean you think he might talk more to you just because you're gay? She asked, eyeing him suspiciously. Maybe. You fags, said Lewis, rolling her eyes. You're like a private club, you know? Let's not get into that now. No, really. You want to be accepted, but you can't accept that some straight people just might. Rawlings shook his head. Listen, we'll have a group therapy session on sexuality some other time. Just not now. I'm too tired. Okay, fine. You go over alone and talk about boy things or whatever. I don't care. I'll get a ride downtown with the crime lab. She nabbed the thermos off the dashboard. Just don't forget to take a real good look around his apartment. Maybe he'll even let you do a search without a warrant. Yeah, he just might, Rawlings smiled. He's starting to get real comfortable with me. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.